So in the spirit of trying new things for my channel, we're trying something else new today. I've already responded to a crappy propaganda channel and screen rants, and to the Nostalgia Critic, who is arguably worse than either of those things. But today I'm gonna be responding to an actual legitimate creator. A person who I actually look up to and admire, and whose content I really enjoy. And that's Exci, formerly Exci's Sins. And I just gotta say, Jay, I know you're watching this. Thank you for coming and giving this response a chance. I think it's probably worth pointing out right here at the top of the video that I'm not making this response maliciously. I really love Jay's content, even in spite of this video, which I think contains some of Jay's coldest takes, and which I think gets a lot of things genuinely wrong about Steven Universe. In fact, Jay, after Steven George of Steven Plays, who is my favorite YouTuber for very personal reasons, you are my favorite YouTuber. Period. The video that I'm responding to today has not changed that, and so hopefully you don't get upset by this. That said, as I mentioned before, I do think that this video gets a lot wrong. This video is specifically a critique of Steven Universe as of Change Your Mind. In fact, as Jay himself puts it, change your mind.
Takes all of the potential built up over the previous 5 seasons of the show and completely destroys it over the course of 45 excruciating minutes.
And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with disliking Change Your Mind. I can certainly see why even someone who had been a fan of the show up to the point that Change Your Mind aired might not have liked the episode. I'm not going to be arguing against anyone's opinion here. I'm going to be sticking to things that I think are misinterpreted facts. That said, this isn't going to be a traditional response video. I'm not going to go clip by clip, point by point, and respond to each thing one after another. There are some specific clips that I do want to respond to in that manner, but most of my responses are going to be more broad. So I guess it makes sense to get those specific clips out of the way first. If it seems like I'm uncomfortable as I'm making this video, that's because this is actually the second time that I have made this very long video, and I'm getting a cold, and my throat hurts very badly, so bear with me, please. Okay, mostly what we're going to be skipping over here is just Jay recounting stuff about Steven Universe. In fact, the early part of this video where he's talking about how the show builds things up really well and talks about why the Garnet Fusion reveal was as good as it was, why so many people resonated with it as much as they did, is a really good part of the video. You guys should go watch this video anyway, but if you need an incentive to do so, watch it for that part. It's really solid. In fact, if you are a Steven Universe fan and you don't want to go watch this video and support Jay, keep in mind he does say a lot of really nice stuff about the show too. He definitely recognizes its strengths, so maybe that will incentivize you to do that. I don't know. Like, for example, he says this.
Now, the pink diamond twist is understandably controversial, as any big twist that, changes everything is, but it is most certainly well executed. For a mystery like this one, where there's been loads of build-up to it, not only does the answer we get have to make sense, it also has to have a big impact, or it will be a massive anticlimax. And the pink diamond twist does both of these things. The evil gem empire that we've spent the entire series fighting against might even see Steven as one of the 4 rightful rulers of them. Another thing that Steven Universe has nailed in the past has been redemption arcs. It's not been perfect at deciding who should get them, but it's been good at executing them. Take Paradox, for example.
And I think that's a really kind thing to say about the writing in the show, even if I kind of only half agree with it. This actually may be something that a lot of you in my audience don't know, but I don't think that the writing on this show is all that good at giving us believable redemption arcs. In fact, I consider the show to have maybe a 70-75% success rate between Paradox's absolutely spectacular redemption arc and Laps's arc, which kind of just happened in the background. It was pretty bad, honestly. It was choppy and lackluster, and even though I like where Laps's character ended up, I don't think it was handled well. I also disagree that Rose being Pink Diamond makes sense, even if I do agree that the reveal was handled well and given appropriate weight. I still don't think that Rose being Pink Diamond makes sense, or that it was the best thing for the show. Like, Jay also says that it opens doors for Steven, it allows him to progress in his dealings with Homeworld and the other diamonds, and that's true. I agree that it did, but I'm actually going to be talking about this tangentially later, so I'm going to leave the rest of my thoughts on this specifically for then. Point is, I am not someone who stands everything about this show, to the point that I actually disagree with some of the positives listed here in this very critical video. There are definitely things in this show that I feel were, in one way or another, mishandled. And while I definitely feel like everything that happened with the diamonds and Change Your Mind could have been handled differently, I will say right out the gate that I don't feel like the treatment of the diamonds is one of those things entirely.
Peridot's arc of loyal servant of the Gem Empire to telling Yellow Diamond that she can stick it up her ass takes about half a season of her repeatedly having her views come into question and being confronted with evidence that opposes the things she believes. But it's only really that fast because she realizes that she's only really based her previous views on the way that she's been told and shown life should be.
This is a good point, except that you missed something. She wasn't just told and shown those things, she was also literally programmed. Like, we don't know the exact degree to which she was programmed, but gems come out of the ground as adults, with adult-level cognizance. With the exception of overcooked gems, like amethyst, they have some understanding of where they're supposed to fit in society already when they're first born.
When a gem is made, it's for a reason. They burst out of the ground already knowing what they're supposed to be, and then that's what they are. Forever.
So Peridot was told these things and shown these things, and also to some degree programmed to believe these things. Gems are, after all, just computers. The Crewniverse has even confirmed that no gem occurs naturally, that all gems were created by someone, even the apparent first gem, White Diamond, which is again something else that we're going to talk about in a little while. But the point is, this is an important distinction to make, because we've seen with other Homeworld gems, a couple of the rubies, for example, Navy, the one with the naval gem, and Eyeball, the one with the eyeball gem, that in most cases, that programming is enough to keep gems from believing Steven, from trusting in Steven enough for him to start to change them the way that he started to change Lapis and Peridot. Going with Peridot as an example, as you did, Jay, it's heavily implied by some of Peridot's later dialogue that she was only ever really willing to hear Steven out in the first place and start to accept that the things that the crystal gems stood for might be right, because she actually experienced some of the same bigotry that they do. The same kind of bigotry which she, because of the pressures of her society, perpetuate against them. Peridot is, after all, an Era 2 gem. She was made with fewer resources than her Era 1 counterparts, which are considered objectively better than her in gem society, even though they're the same kind of gem and should have the same station. It takes her a while to voice this, but it was definitely bouncing around in her head as she was seeing the crystal gems act out, quote unquote, in all of the various ways that they did, and it had to have impacted how willing she was to accept those things, as it gave her some reason to immediately start to relate to them. And something similar can be said of Lapis. There is no guarantee that Peridot would have been so ready to listen to Steven and the other crystal gems, and so ready to change her ways, had she not experienced that bigotry, and there's no guarantee that Lapis would have remained friends with Steven after realizing that he was an enemy of Homeworld if she hadn't been abused by Homeworld when she was put in that mirror, and then abused by them again when she tried to go back and resume her old life. Peridot and Lapis were both gems who experienced breakdowns, flaws in the supposed flawless system that was Homeworld, that Homeworld supposedly is. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why Peridot's arc feels so much more satisfying than Lapis's arc, aside from the fact that we just didn't see Lapis for a very long frickin' time, because we actually see Peridot experiencing one of those breakdowns when she has that conversation with Yellow Diamond that you referenced in your video, Jay. She expects Yellow Diamond to react with perfect logic and reason, and when Yellow Diamond doesn't, seeing that additional breakdown of the system, that reinforces all the things that she's already been thinking about Homeworld society. Again, I'm going to stop here because this is going to be important later, but I just want to establish that gems like Peridot have experienced breakdowns in the system that made them susceptible to change. Or at least we can infer that they did.
In the Gem Empire, pearls are used as servants. That's what they're made to be.
Slaves, not servants. Like, this isn't a specific criticism of you. A lot of people get this wrong because they don't actually use the word slave in the show, at least as far as I remember. But it's one of my pet peeves, so I had to bring it up. They're owned by other people. They're slaves.
I wonder if I'm bringing all of this up for a particular reason, perhaps.
Yeah, we all know where you're going with this. We all know that you think that White Diamond's turnaround didn't make sense. But, and again, I'm making this video in good faith. But I think that it's really, really unfair to compare this moment to Peridot's entire arc, which is something that I'm going to get into later. Again, but just keep that in mind for me, Jay. Because I really do think that the mere fact that you feel justified in making this comparison illustrates why you're wrong about White Diamond. For the next part of this video, I'm actually going to bring a little cartoon avatar up here so I can leave Jay's video up at all times and just kind of pause it, more because that makes editing easier for me than anything else, and also because I'm having to re-record some of this anyway, and it means that I won't have to get my camera set back up and everything for that specific part. But keep in mind, this is a big chunk of Jay's video. It's the biggest chunk of Jay's video that I'm going to be running through in the entirety of mine. In fact, once I get to a specific point, I'm just going to drop Jay's video entirely and make my points more broadly.
Change Your Mind is the name of the Season 5 Steven Universe finale, and it wraps up basically all of the loose plotlines in this show, in the stupidest, most boring, lazy ways possible.
I can get if you think the plot was boring, that's an opinion. I certainly don't agree, but I'm not going to fault you for that. I do think calling it lazy is incorrect, though, for reasons I'm going to get to in a minute.
The arc leading up to it saw Yellow Diamond and Blue Diamond learning that Steven has Pink Diamond's gem. Now, of course, they don't react to this by just putting aside all of their own core values and replacing them with Steven's values. Haha, could you imagine?
Yet nobody actually does that, though. Like, very obviously.
After learning that he's got Pink Diamond in his belly, they start listening to him. They are under the impression that he literally is the person they've been mourning for thousands of years, but that's as far as it goes. They decide that they need to get White Diamond involved. When each of the other 3 diamonds got involved with the plotline of the show, the impact had been huge, which of course only makes sense given they're the most powerful and influential characters in this world. I mean, you know, we've already been over the impact that Pink Diamond's reveal had, and as that was happening, we were still waiting for White Diamond to finally appear. And then, finally, after all this time...
Pink! There you are. Hello, Starlight. You certainly gave everyone a scare. They're all just thrilled to see you safe and sound.
Then, after White Diamond's reveal, there are a couple of episodes in which she doesn't appear, and these aren't great. Our heroes definitely should know that this is an incredibly high-stakes situation, and that impressing the diamonds, which is what they're trying to do, is incredibly important. If it goes well, they could literally put an end to their entire conflict, but at the same time, if it goes poorly, they could get in seriously deep shit. Potentially even deep enough to end their entire conflict, only with them losing. You'd think they would understand the vital importance of this situation, especially since a couple of them keep saying how vitally important the situation is. But then some of them, particularly Amethyst and Connie, just start fucking around. Great. Thanks for that really contrived way of injecting conflict into this situation. The episode ends with all of our main characters except Steven and Connie being poofed.
You mentioned a contrived means of escalating the conflict here. Specifically Amethyst goofing off and Connie screwing up and getting the crystal gems all disrupted, not poofed, but being disrupted is actually worse, so your point does still stand. And I agree, Amethyst was acting like, well, Season 1 Amethyst, when she should have been acting like Season 5 Amethyst. But then again, she didn't really push the envelope far enough to cause any problems, so maybe she did know something that we didn't about how far you can push things on Homeworld. So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. Connie, on the other hand, I'm also going to give the benefit of the doubt to in terms of her writing, because she's a child whose boyfriend is the God Emperor, one of the God Emperors of the alien planet that she's on that she doesn't know anything about. That is probably a very good reason why the crystal gems should not have brought her on this mission with them, but it does explain why she might do some things that might get her in trouble. She might genuinely think that she's safer here than she actually is, that they're all safer here than they actually are. And what really does this lead to, aside from the crystal gems declaring who they are and what they actually believe, rather than just trying to conform to what the other diamonds want them to do? Do you really want them to achieve peace with a hostile empire by conforming to the sensibilities of that harmful empire? Because I don't think you do. In order for the crystal gems to actually achieve a lasting peace that's of benefit not just to them, but to all the other oppressed gems that are part of the Gempire, they were going to eventually have to declare what they believe. They were going to eventually have to stand up and make the same declarations that they were spurred to make by Connie's rash actions. So while her rash actions did certainly accelerate the conflict, it's a conflict that was going to come eventually anyway. So it's not contrived.
Blue Diamond really isn't a fan of Steven fusing with quote-unquote lesser life forms, which is, the thing that he did to piss her off in the first place. Blue Diamond gets really mad at Steven and then stops, realizing that this kind of behavior is exactly the thing that she did to drive Pink Diamond away in the first place. So she frees him and Connie from the tower and then goes to collect the rest of his friends from Yellow Diamond. At this point we are maybe starting to push her character a little further than it's reasonable to. She's disgusted by Steven's actions, she's disgusted by him fusing with lower life forms, and definitely should understand that if she sends him back to Earth, that's what he'll continue to do. But since her main driving force throughout the show so far has been grieving Pink Diamond, if she's going to prioritize anything over those values, it's going to be Pink Diamond. So long as she doesn't just become a radically different person for no reason.
And where did she do that exactly, Jay?
Then they fight. Then they have a conversation that lasts a minute and a half, and then Yellow decides to completely switch sides. It turns out both of these characters are really unhappy with the state of the Gem Empire, and don't like it anymore. I'm sorry? Blue Diamond essentially says, I know that you've had doubts in our empire. To which Yellow Diamond says, yeah, you're right, I have. Let's turn against it and completely switch sides. White Diamond is the true villain. She's the one making them act the way they've been acting. Blue and Yellow don't like it, they've just been too scared to go against her. Well, Blue and Yellow's development to this point was definitely rushed, but this could totally be interesting. It turns out they don't really believe in this regime themselves either. They're just too scared to go against the greater evil that is White Diamond.
I put this specific last passage here where you acknowledge Blue and Yellow's revealed motivations here, because I'm going to talk about this later, almost as if you didn't acknowledge this. And I want to be absolutely clear that I'm going to speak of it the way I speak of it entirely for context's sake, as I'm going to be talking about the diamonds and their motivations and lumping them in together. But I'm also leaving this little chunkier video in here, Jay, because I am genuinely surprised that you acknowledge that this is what ended up being Blue and Yellow's motivation to help Steven here at this point in the story, and yet you never once considered the possibility that White Diamond might have been in a similar situation, but that her fear manifested in a different way. Because just like Blue and Yellow were afraid of what White would do, and to a lesser degree, they were afraid of disappointing White if they tried to stand against her, White is also clearly framed in this episode as having been afraid for a very long time that all of the things that she was forcing the gems beneath her to do for what she considered the greater good were actually wrong. Like, they don't come right out and spell it out to us, but you seem to be implying that you think coming right out and spelling out the motivations of the diamonds wasn't a good thing, as it made things feel kind of cheesy and rushed. So wouldn't leaving White's motivations for us to infer as intelligent audience members be objectively better than that?
Well, Steven saves them all from fall damage by fusing with them midair. Fusing with all of them. Hang on, sorry, what? But they weren't even awake. Up until literally just now, fusion has been something that both parties have had to decide to do together. Not only that even, they have to be in sync with each other to do it. Excluding, of course, situations where gems are actually torn apart and then stuck back together. One gem can't just decide to fuse with another gem. They have to be in sync. They have to be feeling it together. That's what this whole power is about.
You're kind of halfway right about this one. You're right that two gems have to be in sync to fuse together, and you're right they both have to be feeling it, as you put it, but you're wrong about literally everything else. You know how I cut in earlier to point out that Yellow Diamond's powers disrupted the forms of the crystal gems rather than just poofing them? That's actually an important distinction, because a gem that's poofed can reform within seconds. We see that with Amethyst all the time. They just usually take longer than that because normally they don't have the option to change the way they look unless they've been poofed. But Yellow Diamond's powers work like one of the little disruptor weapons that we saw Jasper use in the episodes The Return and Jailbreak. Yellow Diamond even points this out in the episode.
Amethyst would usually be back by now.
They'll be out for a good while. They took a direct hit from me.
Her power literally keeps their form disrupted until the energy can dissipate completely. So even though the gems didn't have bodies, they were still awake inside their gemstones, and they wanted to reform. Fusing just happened to be a catalyst for that. And because they wanted to emerge from their gems, and Steven wanted them to emerge from their gems, they were in sync and they fused together. And I know what the argument against this point is, that both gems have to be aware that they're about to fuse in order to fuse, but we see that contradicted every single time that Steven and Connie fuse by accident, and we also saw it contradicted when Jasper was able to fuse with this corrupted gem simply because she wanted it out of its cage and it wanted itself out of its cage. Even though Jasper was the only one of them who intended to fuse, Jasper in this scene literally did the exact same thing that Steven did to the other crystal gems. You are just factually wrong about this one, Jay. I'm sorry. Like, there's a bit of a nuance to everything else I'm going to say later. You could argue against my later points reasonably, and I would have to admit that I could actually be wrong, but I'm definitely right about this one. You just misinterpreted the rules of this specific ability.
The only thing we really know for sure about White Diamond is that she's the one who's been making all of the evil decisions behind the evil empire for thousands of years, and that when the people that she's most likely to view as equals in the entire universe went and said, "We feel that something is a bit wrong," her reaction was to not listen to them for a second before completely taking away their free will.
Because she was afraid to admit that they might be right, so she silenced them before they could say anything else and fracture her facade any further. All of the diamonds were afraid, including White.
So good luck changing her mind, because there's no way that's ever going to happen. Certainly not within the next 20 minutes, at least. White Diamond gets furious with this, saying, "You're not half human, you're not Steven, you're Pink Diamond. Why are you acting like such a child?" To which Steven says, "I am a child. What's your excuse?" To which White Diamond decides to be good.
She does not.
I oversimplified, but that's basically it.
I mean, it's not, so maybe you shouldn't have oversimplified it? Especially, Jay, since that's the kind of thing that you tend to come down pretty hard on in your responses to other people's videos.
After failing to restore Pink Diamond, White Diamond realizes that she's not perfect and has a flaw herself. She frees everyone, she has an identity crisis, and Steven tells her that it's okay not to be perfect.
Okay, you're on track so far.
Then next time we see the diamonds, they're all just completely good now, happy to do whatever Steven tells them is the right thing to do.
I've been saying please and thank you even to lower life forms.
What did we talk about?
Equal life forms.
You literally just played a clip which contradicts what you just said, Jay. You say that the diamonds are just completely good, and then you show a clip where White Diamond has to be scolded for not being a good person yet? I expected more from you, senpai. I mean, JXE. But that's pretty much the end of what specifically I want to talk about from your video in terms of, like, actual clips. So I want to say, if anyone who's watching this wants to learn more about the ways in which the diamonds are not good guys yet as of the movie, Toon Ruins did an absolutely fantastic video about it called "We Need to Talk About the Diamonds." I will try to remember to link it here, but if not, you should be able to find it by searching. That said, I'm about to switch back to the portion of this recording that I didn't have to re-record, so that means my little avatar is about to go away and you're about to start to have to look at my ugly face again. I apologize. Anywho, let's back up though for a second.
So long as she doesn't just become a radically different person for no reason.
You say this as if we actually know what kind of person Blue Diamond was before this moment. As if we actually know why she was so upset by Steven's behavior and behavior like it before right now. But we don't. We don't find that out until this exact episode. We've only met the real Blue Diamond, the Blue Diamond who is not restricted by the rules of her station, a couple of times. And this is the first time that she ever has a meaningful dialogue that could lead to anything meaningful with a main character on this show. Effectively, this is the first time that we are actually getting to talk to the real Blue Diamond when she feels like she can actually break down and admit things about the Gempire that she wouldn't necessarily admit otherwise. This leads to her confrontation with Yellow Diamond, and then Blue and Yellow's confrontation with White Diamond, where they reaffirm that they understand that there are many flaws in their society, that they have known of them for a long time, but that they have kept their mouths shut and continued to work within the system because of their fear of White Diamond and her powers. Fears which are proven entirely justified in this exact scene that I'm playing on the screen right now. This is what we call context. Using this context, we can determine that Blue and Yellow's harsh responses to things like cross-gem fusion and other various counterculture behaviors are born of fear and not of a genuine belief in the system as it has been imposed upon them and the gems under their charge. They may have succeeded for a while in convincing themselves that they genuinely believed in the system, but these scenes here are meant to show us that even if they did convince themselves of that, they've realized the truth. They've realized that they were wrong. Because the fact of the matter is, their beloved Pink Diamond died, at least as far as they knew, and so they started to look upon her in a romanticized light. For a long time, they, in order to cope, managed to convince themselves that it wasn't their failure, that it wasn't a failure of the system that got her killed, blaming her death instead on the degenerate actions, quote-unquote, of a counterculture group. But then they had thousands of years to percolate on what happened. Just like Lapis and Peridot, these are two characters who saw the flaws in the system firsthand. And then, surprise, surprise, it turns out that what happened to Pink didn't actually happen to Pink. And yeah, at this point, they don't realize yet that she is actually dead now. They think that Steven is her, but they do, at the very least, know now that she didn't die, but instead was the leader of that counterculture that they thought had gotten her killed for all this time. And then they remembered that Pink was kind of counterculture. So much so that she gave up her role as one of the 4 god empresses of an unstoppable space empire because that's how much she believed that that space empire's way of doing things was wrong. Are you really saying that you don't think that that's enough to finally push them into taking that final leap towards recognizing and voicing all of the things that they have seen wrong with the system already? Really? Like, you acknowledge that part of the episode where they go to White and voice all of their concerns about everything that they think the Gempire is getting wrong, but it's like you didn't bother to examine the context around it and try to figure out why they might be making that decision. Shame on you, Jay. You're starting to remind me of CinemaSins Jeremy a little bit, and that's not a good look on you. Oh, by the way, serious question. I know you just came out with one of these, like, what was it, a couple weeks ago or something, but when is your next examination of everything wrong with Infinity War coming out? Because I'm having withdrawal already. So anyway, yeah, you're wrong about Blue and Yellow, just like you are. I'm sorry. I don't want to be that frank, but it's true. You didn't pay attention. Sorry, I don't make the rules. But what about White? Her turnaround was way faster than Blue or Yellow's. I can't possibly saying that it makes sense, can I? Yeah, actually I am. The fact of the matter is White's turnaround does make sense, and it's all about context. And it comes right down to these bits of dialogue here.
Something's wrong with me! This can't be happening. I can't have a flaw. I'm supposed to be flawless. If I'm not perfect, then who am I? If you're not pink, then who are you? Who is anyone?
You know, if you just let everyone be whoever they are, maybe you could let yourself be whoever you are too.
But I'm not supposed to be like this. I'm supposed to know better. I'm supposed to be better. I'm supposed to make everything better.
I know that you think that the idea that blue and yellow and even white might all have had doubts for a very long time about what they were doing doesn't make sense, that it comes out of nowhere. And on one hand, you're kind of right, because this definitely isn't one of the reveals that this show builds up to specifically. But this isn't like those other reveals. This isn't a long-standing mystery in the show, but it does build off of one. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute. Instead, these bits of dialogue here, the stuff with blue and yellow talking to white, and then this stuff with white, I'll play it again.
Something's wrong with me! This can't be happening. I can't have a flaw. I'm supposed to be flawless. If I'm not perfect, then who am I? If you're not pink, then who are you? Who is anyone?
You know, if you just let everyone be whoever they are, maybe you could let yourself be whoever you are too.
But I'm not supposed to be like this. I'm supposed to know better. I'm supposed to be better. I'm supposed to make everything better.
This is all straight up lore. This is the show telling us that even White Diamond has an assigned purpose. That White Diamond was given the mission of running the Gempire the way that she does by an outside force, or at the very least, she truly believes that she was. And considering that the show has never been coy about the fact that, as I mentioned before, gems are computers programmed by someone else in every case.
When a gem is made, it's for a reason. They burst out of the ground already knowing what they're supposed to be, and then that's what they are. Forever.
It would make sense for White Diamond to be programmed too by some outside force. And maybe she's been alive so long at this point that her programming has become in some way corrupted, but that does mean that some fundamental part of who she is has driven her towards shaping society around her in a specific way. But it's very important to keep in mind that that came from an outside source and not from her, because that in and of itself helps to justify why she might turn around so quickly, that she might in the end prefer her own informed beliefs over something imposed upon her by someone else. That's the foundation that I was talking about here, that these bits of lore were put here to build upon. And that's the age-old mystery of where exactly gems come from. So, the potential for White to change her mind in this way was already there. She just happened to get a nudge in the right direction by Steven. Quite literally. And this is something that was built up in the show. So much so that myself and other theorists such as myself have been predicting for a long time that a specific power set of Steven's might in some way be utilized to resolve one or more of the final conflicts in this show. Because see, this thing that happens right here, this could only have happened because of Steven. We know from some dialogue earlier in Change Your Mind that White Diamond used to show emotions all the time.
White, we used to be close. Don't you remember? When Pink would make us laugh. All those silly things she did for no reason. There was a reason. She wanted us to be happy together.
But if we look at the way that blue and yellow react to her being a different color...
What is this? I feel ridiculous. Yellow, blue. She's off color.
We can infer that when she used to show emotions back in the day, she didn't change colors. I talk about this more in depth in a video that I'm going to put a link to in the top corner of the video right now, so you guys can go hear more specifics about this particular theory. But it seems obvious, at least to me, that if white doesn't change color on her own, that she must have been in some way compelled to by an outside force. And I mean, if the pink fits, after all, we know a couple of things about Steven's powers, that he has the ability to project himself into the minds of other gems and even other people on some occasions. He's sent his consciousness into Lars's head, into Malachite's head, into the cluster's head. And we also know that he has the power to manipulate emotions in some way or another, that he's empathic, psychically speaking. Usually he uses this to take in the emotions of others, kind of like how he felt what the cluster was feeling as it was about to wake up. This is how he can come to understand people so quickly sometimes, even when they're fundamentally different than him in effectively every imaginable way. And what do you get if you combine these two powers together, other than the power to share his own emotions, project his own emotions into someone else, to literally give a part of himself to someone and use that to wedge their mind open a little bit and help them to consider possibilities that they might not have otherwise. After all, it makes sense. Pink Diamond, who Steven has effectively replaced at this point, is shown to be an opposite parallel to White Diamond, who literally suppresses the minds of other gems, closing them up and forcing them to conform strictly to her desires. It would make sense if Steven has some opposite to that power. It makes thematic sense that he would have the ability to conversely wedge people's minds open and help them to change their minds for the better. After all, again, we know that White Diamond doesn't do this on her own typically, and Steven is the only variable in the room with anything even close to the level of power that it would take to affect a diamond in this way. And this is a power of Steven's. This is not a thing that Rose could do. She didn't have that same empathic ability that he does. This brings us all the way back to what you said earlier about how Steven being effectively the new Pink Diamond opened the door to his dealings with Homeworld. Because I gotta say, if Steven had managed to achieve real lasting peace with Homeworld by throwing around the weight of his mother's authority, I would have been super disappointed. Because it wouldn't have come from him. The hero of the show wouldn't have actually won the day. But if we look at it this way, if we look at it as Steven utilized some power to open White Diamond up to the possibility of changing, then Steven did save the day. He was the one responsible for making everything better, not his mom, who frankly didn't deserve to be the hero in this moment. So not only does this explain why White Diamond might have turned around so fast, but it allows Steven to be the hero in that moment, using a literal manifestation of how far he has come as a character, that being the powers that he unlocked along the way. It not only fits within the lore, but it's also thematically appropriate, which I think is objectively a good thing. Steven, someone who is open to redeeming literally anyone, helps everyone who was a victim of this system, even the diamonds themselves, because if this structure, if the belief in the value of this structure was imposed on White Diamond, who then imposed it on everyone else, including the other diamonds, then the diamonds were victims of this system too. Just straight up, objectively. And that doesn't excuse all the horrible things that they did, but it might explain them, and it might even earn them a second chance. Now, I know what you're going to say to this, Jay. I know you're going to say, AJ, you handsome devil, your takes are so hot, please do a collab with me. But aren't you forgetting that the diamonds are literal dictators, and therefore they should have all of the crimes of every real-life dictator attributed to them, as many Steven Universe crits tend to attribute to them? To which I respond, no, I'm not forgetting that they're dictators. But I also recognize, again, that context is important. Because the fact of the matter is, it doesn't seem like the crew ever really intended to compare the Diamonds to real-life dictators through their narrative. It seems more like they intended to frame them as an abusive family unit. That they just kind of assumed that we would recognize that it's not reasonable to make a one-to-one comparison between computer brain aliens in a cartoon and actual real-life dictators in the real world who are not that. Because again, it's worth remembering that the gems are pre-programmed computers, that they are born as adults with some knowledge of where they are supposed to fit within their society. And yes, you can compare something like that to a person being brought up in a bigoted society and being propagandized towards believing a certain thing, but you also have to keep in mind that the Diamonds didn't have anybody else until Steven came along to show them that there was a different, better way. Let's compare the Diamonds to another fictional villain from another great cartoon that's currently running off and on, that being the Dragon Prince, a Netflix series. Let's compare them to the villain of that show, Viren. Viren is a wizard guy. He's got crazy, scary powers like the Diamonds, and you could even argue that because his society is pretty bigoted, that he was programmed from a young age to also be bigoted. Viren is also someone who believes in the superiority of his own people. Just like the Diamonds believe that they're superior to everyone else, Viren believes that humans are superior to the various magical species which share his fantasy world with him. And just like the Diamonds, who are concerned with the survival of their empire so that they can, as Wyat said, spread her light as far as possible, which seems to be her pre-programmed role. Viren sees it as his mission to help his kingdom survive, regardless of the cost. Where Viren differs from the Diamonds, and why I count him to be a true and probably irredeemable villain, where I don't consider the Diamonds to be as such, is Viren grew up with the king of that kingdom that he sees it as his role to protect. A king who, despite the fact that he did some pretty bad stuff after a major loss, has always believed that bigotry is wrong. Like, I know that's kind of a weak sauce, basic bitch kind of thing to believe, but in their world it's really not. It's actually pretty extremely novel. And these are people who not only grew up together, but they worked together. They were best friends. Viren had every chance to listen to his king and best friend and decide to change his ways. The Diamonds didn't until Steven came along, and they did. Which I would say is the logical course of action. And I think the fact that they were willing to take that chance and trust Steven that his way was better earns them a chance to change, which is all that they've been given. And this brings us back to what I said earlier about comparing this turnaround of White Diamonds to Peridot's entire character arc. Because at the end of the day, you're comparing a character's entire redemption arc to just the start of another's. Peridot's redemption arc is done. In fact, I doubt that her character will get another true arc, even in the sequel series Steven Universe Future, coming sometime next year, probably. Her development seems to be finished, satisfactorily so. Whereas White Diamond's redemption arc is only just now starting, and we already have evidence from the teaser/opening of that sequel show that it's not going to stick. Because again, and I cannot stress this enough, Wyat is not redeemed. This is just the jumping off point for what could become a genuine redemption arc for the character. And I think, Jay, that it's really dishonest and disingenuous of you to compare these things to each other as if they're comparable at all in their current state, when they're plainly not. Again, like I said earlier in the video, much earlier in the video, now this is actually going on longer than the original version of this did at this point. If you didn't like Change Your Mind, that's fine. I'm not going to argue that your opinion's wrong. I'm just going to argue that all these facts that I've listed out here are wrong, because they are. But Jay, I still love you. I still love your content, and I hope there's no hard feelings between us now that I've made this response, assuming that you did actually see it, which I have literally no reason to assume that you will. Addressing specifically my subscriber base at this point, please go check out Jay's content. It's really freaking good. He does a lot of response style videos, but my favorite is the one where he responds to CinemaSins. Any of the JXE fans who came to hate watch this video will get why that's funny. The point is that he has a lot of those, but they're good. They're witty, they're funny, they're endlessly entertaining, they're significantly more entertaining than the videos that he's responding to. The dude just seems like a genuinely fun, reasonable guy, and if you haven't heard of him yet, or you haven't given him a chance for one reason or another, he deserves that you do. As per usual, I'd like to know, what do you guys think of any of the stuff that I brought up in this video, assuming that you can actually remember how it started well enough to recall everything that I said in it. Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later. Collab with me, Jay.